What's going on, Bears fans? It's your boy Ajla Maestro, Chicago Bears Hub, and if that clip didn't just make you a little uneasy, I don't know what will. Because when a guy who covers this team for a living gets asked a simple question, who's the best player on your defense? And the answer is basically, it's complicated. That tells you something. In my own personal opinions, that's not a gotcha moment, that's an honest moment, and honest moments are exactly what we specialize in on this channel. But first, thank you guys. We just hit 1,000 subscribers here at Chicago Bears Hub. And in my own personal opinions, that number means more to me than you probably realize. That's 1,000 of you choosing the no-filter version of Bears coverage. So new goal, new number to chase, 2,000 subscribers. If you're not subscribed yet, smash that button right now before I even get into today's topic because we are not slowing down. All right. Let's dig into this mailbag, because there was a lot in here, and in my own personal opinions, some of these answers are going to spark real debate in the comments. Let's start with that defense question because it's the one that stuck with me the most. As Harrison Graham broke it down on his show, you can really only make a case for 3 guys as the best player on this Bears defense right now. Jalen Johnson, Montez Sweat, or Kyle Bryant. And look, in my own personal opinions, when your list of best player on the defense candidates comes with this many asterisks attached to every single name, that's a red flag disguised as a debate. Let's go through them one by one, because the caveats matter here. Jalen Johnson, the guy you'd probably want to say without hesitation, is coming off a season where he was hurt for a big chunk of it. And by the show's own account, he didn't look like himself when he actually did play. That's not a knock on his talent, that's just reality. You can't crown a guy the best player on your unit off of name recognition and a big contract if he wasn't historically banged up. Then you've got Montez Sweat, who according to the breakdown had a nice season, but here's the line that got me. And in my own personal opinions, this is the most honest thing said in that whole segment. If Montez Sweat is the best player on your defense, that's not exactly where you want to be as a franchise. That's not disrespect to Sweat, that's just an admission that you need more difference makers around him. And then you've got Kobe Bryant at safety, a guy who's still genuinely learning the position, but flashed enough that people believe in the long-term outlook. Now, in my own personal opinions, here's the part that actually excites me. Even with all those caveats, this isn't the cupboard is bare situation. It's we've got upside everywhere, but no established superstar yet situation. And those are 2 very different problems. As mentioned in the breakdown, Devin Bush is viewed as a good player, Dylan Thiemann is viewed as a guy who could turn into a very good player, and then you've got the Kyler Gordon variable, where everybody agrees that when he's healthy, he's genuinely excellent. The when healthy part is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. And that health question mark is exactly the kind of thing that could swing this whole conversation by October. And then there's Austin Booker, who's being talked about as a guy who could realistically climb into that one of our better defensive players tier by the end of the year. So when you zoom out, in my own personal opinions, this isn't really a story about a weak defense. It's a story about a defense that's one health season and one breakout year away from suddenly having an obvious answer to that question. If Jalen Johnson comes back fully healthy and plays like the player everybody knows he can be, that answer becomes easy and fast. That's the storyline I want you all watching for through camp and the preseason. Not is this defense good, but which of these 5 or 6 guys steps up and takes that alpha role? Now let's pivot to the offense, because there was a really interesting exchange about Caleb Williams that I think deserves its own spotlight. Somebody sent in a message, paraphrased, but the gist was this. If you've got a great supporting cast, an easy schedule, any quarterback can play in structure. But when you're running a complex offense against a legitimately tough defense, that's when you find out who can actually operate under real pressure. And obviously, in my own personal opinions. That's a not-so-subtle shot at Caleb Williams, clearly built off some of the criticism that's floated around about whether he plays within structure or freelances too much. Here's where it got good, though. Harrison Graham directly referenced comments that Mark Schlereth reportedly made recently, essentially saying Caleb doesn't play in structure, and according to the breakdown. That claim got pretty thoroughly dismantled on the show. Now look, I wasn't in that room, I don't have the full breakdown of every stat they used to make that case, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend I can verify every piece of that rebuttal for you. But in my own personal opinions, the broader point stands regardless of who's right in that specific back and forth. The idea that Caleb Williams is purely a backyard football, off-schedule quarterback with zero structure to his game is, at minimum, an oversimplified take. Is he spectacular outside of structure? Absolutely, no debate there. The ability to shed contact, extend plays with his legs, and make off-platform throws that most quarterbacks in this league simply cannot make, that's real. That's rare, and that's part of why this fan base is so excited about him. But in my own personal opinion, to tighten that part of his game up in year 2 under Ben Johnson, you're not just talking about a fun, exciting quarterback anymore. You're talking about one of the best players at the position in this entire league. Let's move to the secondary, because there was a great breakdown here on Malik Muhammad versus Kyler Gordon that I think fans need to hear. Somebody asked, essentially, would you rather have Muhammad over Gordon if Kyler struggles or gets banged up early in the season? And the answer, in my own personal opinions, was the correct one. These are just different players entirely, and comparing them head-to-head is comparing apples to oranges. As described on the show, Malik Muhammad's frame and skill set profile more as a true outside cornerback, long arms, a leaner build. More of a perimeter cover corner in the mold of certain long-rangey corners we've seen succeed on the outside in this league. Meanwhile, the nickel position in a Dennis Allen defense specifically requires a guy who's willing to play downhill, mix it up physically in the run game, and get used as a blitzer off the edge. And based on that breakdown, that's just not really Malik Muhammad's game right now. That's exactly what makes Kyler Gordon so valuable and honestly kind of irreplaceable in this specific scheme. He'll light guys up in run support, he can play in the box, he can be schemed as a blitzer, and none of that really overlaps with what Muhammad brings to the table. So in my own personal opinions, the real storyline to watch here isn't Muhammad replacing Gordon at nickel, it's Muhammad developing his competition on the outside opposite Tyreek Stevenson, while the Bears figure out their actual. Now let's get into some of the trade and roster speculation, because this is where things get juicy. There was a question about Jonathan Taylor potentially getting traded out of Indianapolis, and in my own personal opinions, this is exactly the kind of scenario Bears fans should be quietly monitoring in the background all season. The logic laid out was pretty simple. Taylor is heading into a contract situation where the Colts have a real decision to make. He'll be closing in on his late 20s heading into his next contract, and if Indianapolis is struggling and potentially heading toward a coaching or front office change, paying a running back big money in that scenario doesn't make a ton of sense for them. In that world, according to the breakdown, trading Taylor for real draft capital becomes a much smarter path than extending him. Now, to be clear, this was framed as a conditional if the Colts are bad scenario, not a done deal or a rumor with legs right now. And in my own personal opinions, that distinction matters. But it was also specifically tied back to the idea that the Bears, if they're legitimately chasing a Super Bowl, would be the exact type of team looking to add a premium offensive piece at the deadline if a player like that ever hit the market. File that one away, because in my own personal opinions, this is a name Bears fans should remember if Indianapolis starts slow this season. There was also a fun little debate about Colston Loveland versus Brock Bowers, and in my own personal opinions, this is a great snapshot of how much confidence people already have in this tight end room. The take here was that Bowers is likely going to see a bigger target share in Las Vegas simply because, according to the breakdown, the other receiving options on that roster aren't as strong as what the Bears have around Loveland. Meanwhile, Loveland's individual efficiency might actually end up higher because he's playing alongside receivers good enough to prevent defenses from bracketing him the way defenses can afford to bracket Bowers in Las Vegas. In my own personal opinions, that's actually a really underrated point. Sometimes the guy who gets fewer targets on a stacked offense ends up being the more efficient, more dangerous player, purely because defenses can't afford to sell out and take him away. Let's talk defense again for a second, specifically the edge rusher room. Because there was a great point raised about Austin Booker and why the Bears didn't necessarily chase a big splash free agent defensive end this offseason. The theory floated was that part of the calculus here is that the organization genuinely believes Austin Booker is ascending, and they don't want to bring in a veteran who ends up taking snaps away from his development. But here's the pushback that I think a lot of Bears fans need to hear, and in my own personal opinions, it's a completely fair one. You don't need to bring in someone to start over Booker to still improve this room. The idea floated was simple roster math. Instead of Booker playing 80 to 90% of defensive snaps, you trim that down slightly. Bring in an experienced situational pass rusher to soak up a legitimate chunk of snaps as a rotational piece, and you still let Booker keep growing into the lead role without wearing him down over a full 16-game season. In my own personal opinions, that's the kind of depth move that doesn't get talked about enough in the offseason, because it's not flashy. But it's exactly the type of roster building that separates good defenses from great ones over the course of a long season. And that ties directly into the question about whether the Bears will actually add an edge rusher before Week 1 or at the trade deadline. The read here was pretty clear. At this point, this roster is likely walking into training camp with what it currently has on paper. And there wasn't a strong sense that free agency right now holds some game-changing addition worth panicking over missing out on. Instead, the expectation laid out was that the front office will let camp, joint practices, and preseason games play out first. See how the health situations shake out at that position. Evaluate who's actually generating real pressure in practice. And then reassess from there, potentially making a smaller trade addition similar to past moves this front office has made at that position before. In my own personal opinions, that patient approach makes sense on paper, but it comes with real risk attached to it because, as was pointed out directly, this pass rush room, even at full health, might not have enough juice to get through an entire season as currently constructed. One more nugget before we wrap up. There was a great cap question about a potential Darnell Wright extension and how the Bears could actually structure that money. Since he's got 2 years remaining on his rookie deal after the 5th-year option was already exercised, the team has real flexibility on how to spread out a new deal. As explained, they could front-load part of a new contract with a bigger signing bonus this year to lower future cap hits, or slightly bump his cap number now to smooth things out down the road, spreading a deal in the range of roughly $120 million across a longer runway so the immediate cap crunch doesn't hit as hard. In my own personal opinions, that's smart, boring, behind-the-scenes team building that never gets the attention it deserves, but it's exactly the kind of long-term thinking that keeps a Super Bowl window open for more than just one season. So when you step back and look at this entire mailbag as one big picture, in my own personal opinions, here's where the Bears actually stand heading into this season. A defense with real talent but no obvious alpha yet. A quarterback who's spectacular outside of structure and just needs to tighten up the routine plays to become elite. A secondary with a clear top corner whose health is a legitimate swing factor. A pass rush room that's betting big on internal development over splashy free agency. And a front office that's already thinking 2 and 3 years down the line on how to keep this whole thing financially sustainable. That is not a finished product, but in my own personal opinions, that is a very real foundation for a team that could genuinely be in the mix by the time the calendar flips to January. That's it for me today, Bears fans. If you enjoyed this breakdown, smash that like button right now and drop a comment telling me who you think is actually the best player on this Bears defense heading into camp. Jalen Johnson, Montez Sweat, Kobe Bryant, or somebody else entirely that didn't even get mentioned. Let's get a real debate going down there. And if you're not already subscribed, hit that button and join us on the road to 2,000 subscribers here at Chicago Bears Hub. We've got no filter Bears content coming your way all summer long, straight through to kickoff. This is Ajla Maestro signing off. Bear down, and I'll see you in the next one. Note on word count A&D sources, this transcript contains significantly more distinct topics than the previous one, which let me cover more ground at roughly 1,850 words while staying accurate to what was actually said. I did not verify the Mark Schlereth quote referenced secondhand in the transcript, so I flagged it as something the host reportedly said rather than stating it as confirmed fact. To push this toward the full 3,000-word target without inventing new stats or claims, I can expand the opinion/analysis sections further. Let me know if